He said it was lost. That the relic, a small fragment of bone, wrapped in linen, sealed in silver, was taken during a fire in the north wing of the monastery. He stood before the abbot, with ash on his robes, and said he had searched for hours, that he had cried out to the saint, that he had wept, when he found only smoke and stone. They believed him. He was young, devoted, trusted by the saint himself. And when he fell to his knees and asked for penance, they gave him none. Because they believed. He had done everything he could. But he hadn't. Because the relic was not lost. It was buried by his own hands. That night, beneath the chapel, in silence, without blessing, without permission. He did not bury it to betray. He buried it because of what he saw. Because when the fire came, the relic began to glow. Not with light, with breath. It pulsed. It hummed. It moved. In a way that bone was not meant to move. And it spoke. Not in words, but in a pressure behind the eyes. A thought that didn't belong to him. A knowing that didn't come from God. So he wrapped it in linen. He dug into the floor, beneath the altar, and he buried it deep. Then he lied. To protect the others. To keep it from rising. He did not confess. Not in the days that followed. Not in the months. Not in the 30 years. He lived beyond the saint. He rose with the brothers. He prayed in the choir. He swept the chapel steps. And lit the altar candles. Every morning. But he never stood near the place where he had buried it. Not again. The floor never shifted. The stone never cracked. But the air changed. Especially in winter. Cold moved slower there. And sometimes the candle near the altar would burn low before its time. Once, during Compline, a novice dropped his rosary. The crucifix rolled to the base of the altar and stopped. Not as if it had landed. As if it had been caught. The monk said nothing. But that night, he didn't sleep. He stood in the chapel, alone, watching the spot where the floor still held his lie. He aged quietly. He was not known for joy, but he was known for peace. And if anyone wondered why he flinched at the sound of stone shifting, or why he paused before taking the Eucharist, they didn't ask. Because he was faithful. Because he was kind. Because no one knew what he had buried beneath their prayers. And no one heard it stir but him. He arrived during Lent. A traveling friar. Tired eyes. Mud on his sandals. And silence like a shadow wrapped around his shoulders. The monks welcomed him. Fed him. Offered him rest. He stayed one night. Then asked to pray. In the chapel alone. It was not uncommon. The monastery was known for its peace. But when the door closed behind him, he did not kneel at the altar. He knelt beside it. To the left. Where no one ever stood. Right where the floor sloped almost imperceptibly. As if something beneath had settled strangely over time. The monk watched from the hallway. Not with suspicion. With fear. Because the stranger had gone straight to the spot. Without hesitation. Without guidance. As if something had called him there. The friar placed his hand on the stone. He whispered a word. The monk did not understand. And the candle above the altar went out. Later that night, as the monks slept, the friar approached the monk's door. He did not knock. He only stood there, in the dark, and said one thing. You weren't wrong to bury it. Then he left. Before sunrise. And the floor began to warm. Like breath. Rising from beneath. It began with a sound. Not loud. Just the soft crack. Of something ancient. Remembering how to break. It came during matins. No one else reacted. But the monk stopped singing. His eyes drifted to the stone. Beneath the altar. To the place he hadn't touched. In 3 decades. And there it was. A line. Barely visible. Running like a scar. Through the center of the chapel floor. It hadn't been there the day before. He told no one. He finished the prayers. Served at table. Carried out his duties. Like always. But his hands trembled now. When he passed the sanctuary. And the candle near the fracture began to flicker. Without wind. That night. He returned to the chapel alone. He lit no flame. He brought no tools. Only his silence. And still. He could hear it. A faint hum. Beneath the stone. Not like a voice. But like breathing. Through stone. It wasn't angry. It wasn't kind. It was waiting. He had confessed many sins in his life. Impatience. Pride. Doubt. But never the one that mattered most. Not because he was proud. Not because he feared punishment. But because he didn't know. If it was a sin. He buried the relic. To protect them. To keep whatever had awakened inside it. From reaching the others. From reaching the altar. From reaching him. But the silence. The years of silence. Had begun to feel heavier. Than guilt. And he knew. The silence was not his alone. So he went to the confessor's cell. The younger monk. The one who had never known the saint. But listened. With the patience of one. Who feared nothing. But the absence of truth. The older monk knelt. Hands shaking. Voice thin. Eyes wet. And he spoke the words. He had buried. With the relic. He told him everything. About the fire. About the movement. About the whisper. In his mind. That did not come from God. And when he finished. The confessor said nothing. He simply wept. And the candle in the room. Split down the middle. Flame twisting. Smoke curling into the shape. Of something watching. By morning. The fracture in the chapel floor. Was no longer a line. It was an opening. The opening wasn't wide. Not yet. Just enough for a slip of air. To rise from beneath. A warmth that didn't belong in stone. A scent like wet linen. And burned oil. The monks noticed it. One stepped forward to inspect the crack. But the old monk spoke for the first time in days. "Don't touch it." His voice was different now. Not harsh. Not afraid. Just tired. Like the silence had aged him. More than time ever could. The abbot ordered a vigil. They would pray through the night. No sleep. No distractions. Only the psalms. But during the third hour, the altar candle flared. Then split. Wax poured onto the stone. And hissed as if it touched flesh. Then they heard it. Not a voice. Not words. But a rhythm. From beneath. Like a heartbeat. That wasn't steady. But waiting. It shook no walls. Cracked no windows. But every monk felt it. In their bones. And the old monk wept. Not from fear. But relief. Because the relic had not forgotten him. And neither had the thing inside it. By morning, the chapel floor had split wide enough to see beneath it. There was no tunnel. No soil. Just stone. And something resting on it. A bundle of linen. Unburned. Untouched by time. The relic. Still wrapped. Still whole. Still pulsing with a warmth that did not rise from God. The abbot demanded it be removed. That they lift it from the stone. And place it on the altar. That it be purified. Named. Restored. But the old monk stepped forward. For the last time. It cannot be lifted. It was not meant to be found. And then, before anyone could stop him, he descended. He stepped barefoot onto the broken stone. And the chapel groaned. As if it remembered him. The relic did not glow. It did not hum. But the silence around it deepened. The monk knelt beside it. He did not touch it. He only whispered. "I buried you to protect them. But I carried you in every breath." The others watched. As the light dimmed around him. Not like a shadow. But like memory. Being erased. And as the last of him faded. Into the crack beneath the chapel. The floor closed. Sealed. Without sound. No one spoke for a long time. The floor had sealed. As if it had never broken. Smooth stone. No fracture. No heat. The relic was gone. So was the monk. No ceremony was held. No funeral psalms were sung. But every candle in the chapel burned twice as long that night. And none of them dripped wax. The abbot recorded nothing. There was no entry in the monastery logs. No mention of relics. Or cracks. Or voices beneath the floor. Only a name. Crossed out gently. In the monastery registry. A silent mark. For a monk. Whose greatest act was never fully understood. Years passed. The chapel remained quiet. But once a year, on the date of the monk's death, one thing would change. The candle near the altar. The same one he lit. Every morning. For 30 years. Would burn with no wick. No flame. Only light. White. Soft. Breathing. And below it, a faint warmth would rise from the floor. As if something beneath had not left, but only gone deeper.